Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Today we're going to be doing a review of this little guy here. So this is Canon's RF to EF to RF adapter, mount adapter. However, this one has something special hidden inside, and I literally mean inside, which is this ND filter. So it's a special version of it where you can insert in the middle of it either an ND filter, a circular filter, or a clear filter. Currently, they're only available, these filters, by Canon, so it's not that you could buy third party, so that's one limitation of it. But this one comes with the ND filter already installed inside of it. So the first thing is, why would you want this? So it actually fulfills two purposes. One is, so I just upgraded to a Canon R6 from the Canon 70D. I did a review up there of my impressions, but that means that I have this I have EF lens, basically that one with the older system, the non-mirrorless system. This is a 24-105 f4, and I would love to use this glass because it is L, so it's a pretty good quality glass on my newer Canon camera. So the first usage of this is for you guys simply to mount your old EF lens on your new R6, R5, or R, any of the Canon mirrorless cameras. So it just adapts that, and it works perfectly well. So that's function number one. Function number two is to replace this. So this is an ND filter, which normally you would screw on the front of your lens, like this, and then use a variable part that it has here to reduce the light going into your camera. And why would you do this? I've seen two usage for it. Probably you guys in the comments can tell me even more. But for photography particularly, you're modifying the exposure of your pictures. So for example, if you're shooting landscapes and you want to shoot a waterfall or something moving, you want a long shutter speed to be able to capture that water in movement. Normally in a bright day, it'll be very difficult for you to do that with the camera because any picture you take will be overexposed. So you put one of these ND filters on it and you darken, so you make sure there's less light going into the camera, which then allows you to play with either the shutter speed, but also the aperture, etc. So it can make you do like this blur effect. It can help your pictures get to like this dreamy look. So that's for photography. What I normally use it for is because I do a lot of video. You want your shutter speed to be approximately double of your frames. So for example, I'm shooting in 25 frames per second. I want it to be a 150 shutter speed. I also want to lock down my aperture. So I want to control the depth of field of what I'm shooting. So that only leaves the ISO for me to play with. So imagine I'm putting 150 shutter speed. I'm putting a 2.8 aperture. So I know I want to lock that down in video. It only makes me be able to play with the ISO. And if it's a very bright day, the only thing I can do is limit the light going into the camera. And that is a very good use of an ND filter. You'll see that a lot of people use this on drones. So for example, the Mavic has tons of ND filters that go inside, but also things like the DJI Pocket, etc., etc. Since you can't play with the other elements, you can only play with shutter speed, and you don't want to have a shutter speed where you don't get that smoothie, creamy, cinematic look, which is exactly like this double. So if you shoot in 30, you want 160. If you shoot in 25, you want 150. You have to limit the light going in. And that's when the filter comes very, very handy. So basically, this one incorporates that ND filter inside the adapter. So let me start with showing you guys physically what this has and how it looks. I have here the RF to EF control ring, and you'll see it's pretty much the same, so very similar. The only thing that this one has is a knob here on the side, which you squeeze and out comes that internal filter, the ND filter. And when it does, you're left there with a hole. And then the other thing that you have is this wheel here, which you roll it up and down, and it will change the density of the ND filter. So you can make it darker or lighter. So it's adjustable. It's a variable filter. And that's it. It's a very, very simple adapter. And let's go directly into what I like and what I don't like about this. So there are four things that I like about it. The first one is the image quality going through it. So there are filters on the market, especially the ones that you mount in front of your camera, from cheap to very expensive, and you do notice a difference. The cheap ones normally distort light or you lose sharpness with it. In this case, this is a very high quality filter. So both in the photos that I was able to do and the video, I haven't noticed any loss of sharpness by having the filter in between the lens and the camera. So the glass that Canon, is this glass or is this plastic? Whatever Canon is using in it, it's the highest quality that you can have. The second thing that I love about this is that it simply works. So as you can see, like I just plugged in my lens, the adapter, the camera, I turn it on, and it works. I don't have to tell in the camera that I have an adapter. I don't have to warn it that it has a type of lens. So actually, if I go in here to the menu, and I'll pop this up, you'll see that if I go to lens aberration correction, it identifies my EF glass correctly. So just like the EF to RF adapter, which I reviewed, it just automatically recognizes the whole system, and the camera will adapt to whatever lens you have on it. So it's actually able to recognize what it is, and you can even go into this menu where it can correct some of the distortions that the lens has and that the camera knows about. The third thing is it validates all my EF glass to work on mirrorless cameras. So especially because RF lenses are pretty expensive, especially the high tier ones, you can easily grab any of Canon's EF lenses and just retrofit it or fit it into your R6, R5 mirrorless camera. And that for me is a huge advantage. The lens works flawlessly. I haven't had any of my old lenses work in a different way in this camera versus my 70D. The only thing that I notice is that autofocus of RF lenses are faster than older EF lenses. But I think that's a consequence of the lens more than having an adapter or even the system together. So it works as good as it would work on a DSLR camera. So my 70D or even I would guess the 5D as well. The only thing to take into account is that the R6 has a very fast frames per second, so it goes up to 20 frames per second, and it's this green icon with the H that if it's not an RF glass, it won't go to that speed. So that's a limitation of the EF lenses. I don't know if it's because of the adapter, because of the system, but I haven't been able to have that high frames per second as I would with native RF glass. And then the fourth thing that I really like about this adapter is that the filter is actually inside the adapter, so inside the camera lens mount system versus what I normally would do, which is screw it on externally. So if it's screwed on, I can touch it, I can get dirt on it, I have to clean it so I can scratch it as well, while this filter is pretty well protected in there, which means that that stellar sharpness that it has, it's not going to be affected by anything external. And so I really like how Canon thought about having this inside here. That said, there are some things that I think could be improved or I didn't really like about it, so I just wanted to share with you guys. The first thing is the wheel. So the wheel that actually changes the ND, the density of the ND filter, it's very, very easy to move. So you'll see here, like I just pass over it and it moves, which means that when I'm taking pictures or when I'm going around with the camera, especially if I'm doing video, anything can just touch this and knock it out of where I have it, which means that I'm not able to lock it in a certain position and just keep going with that position. That's also one of the other things I don't like about this wheel, which is in the older filters, I'm able to kind of to make a mark and see where I am on the ND filter. And then when I want to go back to that place, I can kind of just match up the marks. In this case, the wheel is pretty small and difficult to put a mark on it. So it's very difficult for me to find the same position that I had and go back to it. Probably in photography this isn't as important, but in video, there's several times where I'm moving from one location to another and might go back to a location where I want to know where I had that filter, especially because I'm trying to match one video color balance to another. I can do it in post, but nonetheless, I kind of want to do as much as I can on the camera. The second thing I don't like about this is you always have to have a filter inside. So if I take out the filter, so if I don't want a filter, I'm left with a gaping hole there, which means that light will leak from outside in between the lens and the sensor, which will completely destroy my pictures, or give it some effect, an interesting effect actually, but probably not intentionally. So that's one. And then the other thing is this is actually exposed to the elements. So wind, dust, everything can go in there. So you always will have to have a filter introduced here. And it doesn't come with a transparent filter. So if you want to get another filter to not have the ND filter, you have to pay for that extra. Number 3. Is the lack of a control ring. So the other adapter that I reviewed, and that I personally have this one, it comes with the control ring adapter. So this is what comes on each RF lens. So it's something new to the mirrorless system that Canon has that allows you to control on your lens, aperture, ISO, shutter speed. So there's a lot of stuff that you can configure in the camera and you can change via this. And normally it's for exposure. So by adding this filter, it doesn't have the control ring, and I kind of missed that. It's a good add-on to the system. And then number 4 is the cost of this. So in the UK, currently, it costs £479.99 on the Canon webpage, and that's pretty expensive for an adapter without control ring, which normally costs £119, and an ND filter. So I did a quick check online, and ND filters, variable ND filters, go from around £30 up to £299. This is a Hammer filter. This one is around, I think it was 40, 50 pounds, something like that. So if I would get the adapter without the control ring for 119, plus even a very good quality ND filter, so I think the Peter McKinnon one is 299, it still would be cheaper than getting this adapter from Canon. And given the aggravation that if I want to use it without the ND filter, I would actually need to buy another adapter or filter because it doesn't work without it. So I kind of struggle to see the usage of this unless it's somebody that really specifically wants to adapt a very special EF lens into the mirrorless camera with an ND filter incorporated inside, or else there's kind of much cheaper options to be able to do almost the same thing. Nonetheless, it is an interesting proposition from Canon. The only other consideration, which I didn't put in the likes, but probably I should, is that with this adapter, you only have one ND filter for any EF lens that you can have on the camera. So for example, this 24-105 has a diameter of 77. So this ND filter would not fit in it. I would have to buy another one. And almost every EF lens I have has a different diameter. So this is a EF 50 millimeter. So I would have to buy another filter. In this case, I can just swap the lens, and given the ND filter is inside the adapter, it's already ready to go. So that's something else to consider, which also would affect the cost of it. In my case, since I don't have that many lenses, I'm not going to buy that many ND filters, so the cost is way too high for what I think I will get advantage of it. So my recommendation, my personal one, is it's not something that I would see myself getting, especially because I'm pretty happy with the control ring on the other adapter. So guys, that's my review of the adapter. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, there's tons more content coming on the channel, so feel free to subscribe, watch any of the other reviews that I'd been doing, and I'd like to see you in the next one. Bye everybody.